Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to join us today. My name is Emily Wilkinson, and I'm the Executive Director of Orthodox Christians for Life. Um, Go ahead and let us know where you're joining from if you'd like. Go ahead and tell us in the chat where you are. I want to just introduce Orthodox Christians for Life. If you're not familiar with it yet, we are a new Orthodox pro-life organization. Our mission is to equip the Orthodox community to strengthen its commitment to the sacredness of human life from conception to death, illuminating the Church's teaching on abortion through education and engagement. And part of that includes building a bridge between the Orthodox community and the pro-life movement. So we do that through both representing Orthodoxy to the rest of the pro-life movement and also introducing and partnering with the most effective pro-life organizations out there. So we want to benefit the Orthodox community. And I'm so excited for this webinar because we are doing just that tonight. We are bringing you a speaker from one of my all-time favorite pro-life organizations, Equal Rights Institute, or ERI. And our webinar topic tonight is faulty pro-life arguments and what to use instead. The title really speaks for itself. We are here to learn how to do better, how to be better pro-life advocates who can actually change hearts and minds about abortion. So by the end, you are going to be thinking about how you approach this issue very differently. And you're going to walk away with some new tools to help you have better conversations. Also, at the end of this webinar, I'll be making a special announcement about something new that we are going to be offering to those of you watching who are members of one of our affiliated pro-life ministries, Orthodox Christians for Life Parish Ministries. So please stay until the end because you do not want to miss that. So now I want to introduce our guest presenter, the other Emily on this webinar, Emily Albrecht. Emily is a speaker, writer, and coach with Equal Rights Institute. She is the former co-president of Ols for Life at St. Olaf College, where she worked to transform campus culture using Equal Rights Institute's apologetics to foster respectful and productive dialogues about abortion. And now at ERI, she is using her educational background to write, develop curriculum, and teach pro-life advocates how to change minds, save lives, and promote a culture of life in their communities. So Emily, thank you so much for agreeing to share your evening and expertise with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Emily. It is my pleasure to be here today. I don't know about all of you, but I used to be absolutely terrified to tell people that I was pro life. Okay, let me back up. I grew up in a Catholic Christian household. I went to Catholic school my whole life, and I was pro life not because I really had like great reasons for it or something, but because that's just what my parents told me that I should believe. That's what my church told me that I should believe. And so I was just pro life, but not really active in doing pro life work. And then I got to college, and I knew that college was going to be a place where my beliefs would be challenged to some extent, okay? But I really had no idea what I was actually getting myself into. And when I first got to my college, I went to St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. It's a Lutheran college, actually. And when I first got there, like my freshman year, fall of my freshman year, there was a local pregnancy resource center in that town called the Northfield Women's Center. Amazing place. And they were having their annual fundraising banquet, like a lot of pregnancy centers have. Probably many of you have been to a pregnancy center banquet before, right? So they were having their annual fundraising banquet, and they actually had it on the St. Olaf campus. Like they rented out a ballroom on our campus. And as soon as the students got wind of that, they managed to get hundreds of students to line the halls of our student union with posters, protesting, screaming, trying to prevent this banquet from happening, trying to stop all of these wonderful members of our community from going and supporting the pregnancy center. It was really, really depressing and, quite frankly, a little scary to watch. The next year, not shockingly, the pregnancy center did not have their banquet on the St. Olaf campus. They had it somewhere in town. And that was not enough for the students on my campus. They were so upset that there was even a pregnancy resource center in our town that they managed to organize enough students to go downtown and protest the banquet where it was happening there. Okay, that's what I walked into on my college campus. I had no idea what I was getting myself into, and you're probably not surprised to hear that I didn't really want to tell anyone that I was pro life. And there was actually a pro life group on my college campus, but it was being single handedly run by this one senior girl who was like doing her best, like one woman pro life show style, but nothing she did was terribly effective. And that's not her fault. Okay. She had an entire campus against her. And about the January of my freshman year, one of my good friends convinced me to go to my first pro life club meeting. She and I showed up. We just happened to see a poster for this tiny pro life group. And we showed up. We were the only other two people there. Okay, it was the one senior girl and the two of us. And the senior girl was thrilled, mind you, that we had just single handedly tripled the size of her club by showing up to something. And we started getting active. That spring, we tried to do a bunch of stuff. And I'm going to be totally honest, everything we tried failed epically. Like it was a complete disaster. I remember that we put up a display that spring that was vandalized 13 times in 1 week. And when I say vandalized, I mean like completely destroyed. Entire thing ripped down. We would have to reprint the entire display and put it back up. I don't even want to know how much money we spent that week reprinting that display, okay? And every time that it would get vandalized, we would submit a bias report to our administration, like a report saying, hey, students are kind of tearing down our stuff. They can't do that. And the bias report would just kind of go into a black hole. Like, does anyone actually read these? I don't know. And so we get to the end of my freshman year, and that one senior girl graduates, right? And so my one friend and I are stuck looking at each other and going, I guess we're running the pro life club now. And so suddenly I found myself as the co president of a college pro life club who knew that something needed to change. Clearly, this was not working. Our campus desperately needed to engage with pro life people and actually get to know what pro life people really stand for and who they are. But everything we had tried was not working. And so we didn't really go into that summer with a plan, if I'm being totally honest. And out of the blue, one day in the middle of July, I got the email that literally changed my life forever. It was actually an email from someone who worked at that pregnancy center in town because she had just discovered Equal Rights Institute, which, spoiler alert, is the organization that I now work for. So, literally, not an exaggeration to say this email changed my life because it's the email that introduced me to Equal Rights Institute. She said, hey, I found this pro life organization that literally trains pro life people how to be more effective in talking to pro choice people. And I thought you guys should know about it. They have this online course called the Equip for Life course. It's like a comprehensive training course in how to talk to pro choice people. And I struck gold. I took my club through that course that fall. We also recruited heavily while we were trying to put our people through this course. We got a few tiny core group of like 4 to 5 pro life people. We went through this course and we started doing outreach on our campus every single week. Actually, like setting up a table in our student union with a question on it said, should abortion remain legal? And tons of pro choice students would come over and want to voice their opinion about that. And we would talk to them. I would talk to pro choice students for hours every single week. And fast forward 3 years, my senior year at St. Olaf, and I cannot tell you how many pro choice students had become pro life. I mean, the size of my club had grown to more than 5 times because A, I'd found a lot of pro-life people who were really excited to like realize that there were other pro-life people on this campus and that they could be involved. And B, we had a bunch of students who had been formerly pro-choice and had changed their mind after talking to someone in our group. So we had all of these people in our club, but even more importantly to me, is I saw this dramatic perception change about who pro-life people are and what they actually stand for. I cannot tell you how many conversations I had with a pro-choice person where the conversation would end and they would say something like, "You know, I don't really know what I think right now. Like you've given me a lot to process and I need to take some time to really think about this conversation, but I just want you to know that I really respect you and your club. Like I have never heard such an intelligent pro-life argument before. And I used to hate your club. Like, it was a miracle if I didn't walk past you guys at this table and not want to stop and punch you. Someone actually said that to me, that it was a miracle that they didn't stop and punch me when they walked past. And I was like, thank you. I'm glad you didn't punch me. Like, I don't know how to respond to that. But now I really respect you. And I'm so glad I stopped and actually talked to you because you are nothing like I thought. And I want to tell all of my pro choice friends to come and actually talk to you guys. I really, really respect what you're doing. I like believe that you totally not only have a right to be here talking to pro choice people, but also you should be. And everyone should come talk to you because I just have such a different perception of who pro life people are and what they stand for. My senior year, that pregnancy center, the one that had gotten kicked off our campus, they tried to come back. They had their annual fundraising banquet my senior year on the St. Olaf campus. And there wasn't a single protester. Not a single student came out to protest that banquet. We didn't have a single vandalism my entire junior year at St. Olaf. We had one vandalism my entire senior year. And when that vandalism happened, I submitted a bias report to administration, right? Because obviously I'm going to do that. And I had a personal email back from administration within 30 minutes that they had not only looked at the security camera footage, figured out who did it, and was already putting them through the disciplinary process. Like, suddenly, I was being taken seriously, not only by the students who respected me, but now suddenly administration respected me because they realized that our club was just out there to talk to people effectively and really explain who pro-lifers are and what they stand for. I tell that story a lot. It's kind of an incredible story. Like, I can't really believe that I lived through that story. Sometimes when it's coming out of my mouth, I'm like, this just sounds surreal. But it's what happened. And whenever I tell that story, people inevitably ask me, okay, Emily, what on earth made the difference? Like, how on earth did you change this culture just by having conversations with pro choice people? And my answer is it's really the effectiveness of quality apologetics. It's helping pro life people to, quite frankly, not be weird. Helping pro life people to make more good arguments and fewer bad arguments. And helping pro life people to engage effectively with people that are on the other side so that we can really explain who we are and what we stand for. And that's what I do now at ERI. I help pro life people to be less weird. I think that we need more dialogue among friends and less debate among strangers on Twitter if we're actually going to make an impact in the abortion debate. I really want to help pro-life people be more like I imagine Jesus would be if he was it today, like in the abortion debate and was having conversations with pro-choice people. I think he would be like what Colossians 4:5-6 says. It says, conduct yourself with wisdom towards outsiders, making the most of the opportunity. Let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt, so that you will know how you should respond to each person. I think Jesus would make the most of his opportunities. Like, he wouldn't avoid talking about abortion because it's controversial. Absolutely not. But when he talked about abortion, he would do it with wisdom towards outsiders, towards people on the other side. And he would use grace and he would know how to respond to each person. He wouldn't just respond to like this stereotype of what a pro choice person thinks. No, he would get to know the pro choice person in front of them, what was driving that person's view. He would get to know them and he would respond to that person. That's what I want to help pro life people to be like. I want them to talk about abortion with grace and with wisdom and to understand pro choice arguments so well that they know how to refute them effectively and they know how to understand what's actually driving a pro choice person's view. That's what Equal Rights Institute is. Tim, can you throw up my slideshow on the screen, please? Thank you very much. So that's us at ERI. We help pro life people to think clearly, reason honestly, and argue persuasively. And I think that if we want to change as many pro choice minds as possible, so that one day abortion can actually be illegal and unthinkable in the long term, then we need better than just pictures of unborn babies and bumper sticker slogans. Okay, those things aren't bad in and of themselves, but we need more than that. We need to be making the best arguments and actually talking to pro choice people, changing hearts and minds. So ultimately, what I'm here to talk about today is what arguments not to use and what arguments to use instead. Because at ERI, we've seen that there are basically three categories of pro life arguments. Okay, there's arguments that are true and persuasive. So these arguments are logically valid. They're often really compelling to an open minded pro choice person. So you should use a true and persuasive argument whenever possible, right? Like, I can't think of a good reason that if there was a true and persuasive argument, you wouldn't be using it. Like, that seems really obvious. We want to use true and persuasive arguments. But there's two other categories of arguments. There's ones that are true and unpersuasive. So these arguments are logically valid, but they're rarely convincing to pro choice people. Sometimes that's because it has a uniquely religious premise, or it has you have to have a conservative worldview to really agree with it. And so that obviously doesn't work for a lot of pro choice people. And so if there's a better argument, if there's a true and persuasive argument, we should be using that and replacing, getting rid of the true and unpersuasive argument whenever possible. There's also a third category, though, and that's just plain bad arguments. Okay, these arguments are not just unpersuasive to pro-choice people, but they're actually have intense philosophical problems. So we should avoid entirely making these arguments. My team at ERI has been speaking publicly about bad pro-life arguments for over 10 years. And it all started when we were seeing pro-choice intellectuals talking to their own side and saying, like, okay, guys, don't say that life doesn't begin at fertilization, because it totally does. And you make us look anti-science. Instead, you should be using this other pro-choice argument. I have a lot of respect for those people. Like, it takes a lot of humility to look at your own side and realize that an argument your side is making that supports your conclusion is actually a bad argument. And so I have a lot of respect for people on the pro-choice side who are doing that. But then we noticed that there really weren't any people on the pro-life side doing that, who were saying, hey guys, maybe this isn't the best argument. We should be using better ones. Because most of the time when I've explained to a pro-life person in person, hey, I don't know if that's the best argument, they've instantly switched to something better. Like, it's really easy to understand when you think about it why an argument might not be persuasive, and obviously we want to be as persuasive as possible, so why wouldn't we use a better one if we could? I don't talk about bad pro-life arguments because I want to be a rebel or sound smarter or something. I just think pro-lifers should be thought of as people who think well. I think we'll change a lot more minds if we use true and persuasive arguments. Now, when I talk about these arguments that are bad, the ones I'm about to talk about, it's probably going to make some people feel a little uncomfortable, because I guarantee that every single person watching this webinar right now has made at least one of these bad arguments before. Like, I am going to offend someone at some point during this presentation. That is kind of inevitable. But guess what? I am in the same boat as you are, because I have made every single one of these bad arguments before. I spent years making bad arguments against abortion before I found ERI. So I am not any better than you are. I am just hoping that you can learn from some of the mistakes that I made and start making your own dialogues more persuasive. There's another reason I think that persuasive arguments are important, though. That's because in conversations about abortion, you only have a limited amount of time, right? Usually, they're not going to be able to talk to you for forever. And so if you use a bad argument, they can get turned off from the conversation and you don't have the opportunity to keep going. Even if you're going to make a good pro-life argument later, you may have lost them before you have ever had the opportunity to actually get there. People also have cognitive biases against changing their mind. So, literally, if you have an opinion in your head, your brain is automatically trying to defend your own opinion and prevent you from changing your mind. So, if you give a pro-choice person any reason to discredit what you have to say, like if you make a bad argument before you make a good one, the fact that you made a bad argument can help their brain to instantly say, oh, well, they're stupid. I don't have to listen to anything else they have to say. And so even if you make a good argument, the fact that you already made a bad one gives them an excuse to dismiss your ideas. And obviously we don't want that. So let's get right to it. I'm going to talk about 6 bad pro-life arguments that you shouldn't use. Number 1, your mom chose life. This seems really weird to pro-life people sometimes. Like, they're talking to a pro-choice person and they want to say, don't you realize that you were once a fetus? Like, your mom could have killed you, but she didn't. And the fact that she didn't literally allows you to be here and be pro-choice, ironically, right? So the only people that get to have an opinion about abortion are the people who were not aborted. This idea translates into a lot of bumper stickers, and I see a lot of billboards with this that are like, smile, your mom was pro life. I see it everywhere. Most pro choice people, however, don't think that the unborn is a person. Now, let me be clear about what I mean by that. I don't mean a member of the species Homo sapiens. I mean a person. Most pro choice people do not automatically think that those are the same thing. A member of the species Homo sapien is a biological term. Now, some pro choice people might be confused about the biology of the unborn, in which case, feel free, go talk about that. But a lot of pro choice people, like the majority of pro choice people these days, do understand the biology of the unborn. They do realize that the unborn is literally like a member of the species Homo sapiens. But they separate that from the philosophical idea of being a person. A person is like a thing with rights, like you and I are. Okay. And so they don't think that the unborn is a person. They think it's like a potential person. It's going to become a person later. And so some people have like drastically different points in pregnancy when they think that it suddenly becomes a person. Like maybe when it's viable, they think, okay, now it's a person. Or sometimes they think at birth, that's when it becomes a person. But almost no pro choice person thinks that it is a person from the moment of conception, like at the beginning, even in the first trimester, when a lot of pro choice people think that abortion should be legal. And so when they hear a pro life person say, your mom chose life, they're thinking in their head, well, my mom happened to be in a position where she could have a baby, but if she hadn't been in that good situation and if she'd had an abortion, I wouldn't know the difference. Like, I didn't exist yet. And so I love my mom. I would have wanted my mom to make the decision that was best for her. It literally wouldn't have affected my life because I wouldn't have existed. I wouldn't have known any better. So this argument doesn't reach pro choice people where they actually are. You would be much better off making an argument that the unborn are persons that should have rights like you or I than assuming that the unborn are persons, which this argument kind of does. It can be really frustrating for pro choice people when you make an argument that kind of ignores the whole point of why they're pro choice. All right, bad argument number two, the Bible is pro life. If you're talking to a pro choice Christian, go for it. All right, my friend Scott Klusendorf, he has a great syllogism for you that you can use. Number one, human beings are intrinsically valuable because they're made in God's image. Number two, it is wrong to shed innocent blood. Number three, the unborn are also human beings, and therefore it is wrong to shed their blood. Done. Very easy. I just don't use that argument very often because I don't talk to a lot of pro choice Christians. If I am, and that Christian takes the Bible very seriously, I am more than happy to go there. But if I'm talking to a pro choice atheist, that's not gonna work. And most young pro choice people today are atheist. Like 90% of my college campus, the people that I talk to were atheist. And the Bible isn't gonna be persuasive to them at all. Like if a Muslim came up to you and tried to convince you that like fasting during the month of Ramadan should be legally mandated in the United States and you asked why and then they showed you verses from the Quran, you'd be like, "Okay, I understand why fasting is really important to you and why your faith community should do it, but I don't think that that's relevant to me because I don't believe in the Quran." So the Quran isn't going to be persuasive to me about what I think the US law should be. But I've seen Christians try to do the exact same thing to pro choice people so many times. They'll be like, "Oh, you're pro choice? Well, Psalm 139 says that God knit you in your mother's womb, and Jeremiah 1:5 says that God knew you before time began. And in the New Testament, we have second trimester John the Baptist, who kicked in his mother's womb at first trimester Jesus." And the pro choice person is like, "I don't believe in that book. I think the Bible was written 2,000 years ago by some people who heard voices in their heads." Okay, if you're not ready for that, if you're a pro life person and you're not ready for a pro choice person to say that to you, that can be a really unsettling moment. Because if the Bible is all you've got, then you're left with nothing. We don't live in a theocracy. So the Bible can absolutely inform our beliefs. They inform my beliefs 100%. But we can't make laws merely because it says so in the Bible. And pro choice people know this, and they're going to point that out to you. If all you do is even imply that the Bible is the only reason you're pro life, then the pro choice person has no reason to keep listening to you because they know we don't create laws purely based on Bible verses. I'm not saying that you can't or shouldn't talk about the Bible in your conversations about abortion, but I'm saying that that can't be your only or even your primary argument if you're not talking to a pro choice Christian. And most of the time, you won't be talking to pro choice Christians. All right, bad argument number three. There we go. Now I've got my screen working. Bad argument number three. It is not part of your body. Remember at the beginning when I said that I am in the same boat as you? I have made all of these bad arguments before. This one, I made a lot. This, of all the ones in the list, I have definitely made the most times. Because a pro choice person says, my body, my choice. And then I respond, well, it's not your body. Done. That was like the easiest pro choice slogan to refute ever, right? Wrong. That is not what pro choice people mean when they say my body, my choice. I am not exaggerating. I think that this is a full fledged catastrophe for the pro life movement, that pro life people do not understand what pro choice people mean when they say my body, my choice. Pro choice person says my body, my choice. It's in her body, it's dependent on her body. And the pro life person strawmans them. Strawmanning is when you intentionally misrepresent a proposition that is set up because it's like easier for you to defeat than the opponent's real argument. In other words, strawmanning someone is responding to the stupidest possible version of their argument rather than what they're actually saying. Now, sometimes strawmanning happens on purpose. Like, that's what the definition actually means. But I think most of the time when pro life people strawman pro choice people, they're not doing it on purpose. They really genuinely don't understand what the pro choice person means. And so they end up responding to the stupidest possible version of what the person could mean instead of what they really mean. Regardless of whether it's intentional or not that you strawmanned someone, it is still just as frustrating for the pro choice person. I was at a speaking event last summer, and when I was done with my speech, there was this nice elderly lady that came up to me, and she said, could you give me a smart pro choice argument? Like, what is the smartest pro choice argument you've ever heard? And so I put on my pro choice Emily hat and I said, okay, I think women should have the right to decide what they want to do with their bodies. And she's like, oh, well, that's easy. It's not your body. So I agree, but the fetus is not your body. The fetus has its own DNA, all of that stuff. And I was like, yes, I know that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying pregnancy involves a woman's body, like really intimately. And I think women shouldn't be forced to donate their bodies to this thing that's trying to use it. And she was like, that's not a very good way of thinking about the unborn. The unborn are not parasites. You don't even think the unborn are human? Well, they have human DNA. They're a member of the species Homo sapiens. And I was like, yes, I know that. That is not what I'm saying. I know the unborns are humans. What I'm saying is we don't force people to donate their bodies to help other people. Like, we don't force people to donate their kidney to help other people. So, why are we trying to force women to donate their bodies to help a fetus that is a person? I think it's a person, but we shouldn't be forcing people to donate their bodies to other people. And the nice elderly lady just stood there and stared at me. She was like, I have no reply to that. So then naturally I took a few minutes, I put back my pro-life Emily hat on, and I explained to her the basics of bodily autonomy arguments and how to actually respond to them. Here's what fascinated me. I did not go into that conversation with that elderly lady intending to get upset. Like, she asked me for a smart pro choice argument. I went into role play mode, which I've done hundreds of times before. Whenever I'm training pro life advocates, I'll go into role play mode. I'll play a pro choice person. And I get kind of method acty about it because I've talked to a lot of pro choice people, so I can play a pretty authentic pro choice person. And in this case, I was trying super hard to explain what my view was. And she kept insisting that I was saying something really stupid. And I knew that I was not saying something really stupid. And it made me so aware that I never, ever want to make a pro choice person feel like that. Like, I am not understanding them. And like, I think that they're stupid. So, anytime that you hear the word body from a pro choice person, you always, always, always need to ask a clarification question. You need to say, I want to understand your view. But it sounds like you might mean one of two different things. Do you mean that the fetus is not a human being because it's like functionally a part of the woman's body, like her kidney or something? Or do you mean that it doesn't matter if the unborn is human? Because women should just have the right to do what they want with their bodies. Spoiler alert, pro choice people always mean the second thing. Like 5%, probably even less than 5% of the time, they mean biology. They were confused about biology. They always mean the second thing. Okay. And there are tons of good arguments to the second things, to the whole kidney donation thing that I was going off on when I had my pro choice Emily hat on. There are so many good responses to that. But just saying, well, it's not your body is not one of them. We have tons of material at Equal Rights Institute to teach you how to effectively respond to bodily autonomy arguments. And we're going to talk about one of those amazing ways, the Equip for Life course, at the end of this webinar. So stay tuned for that. But I want to be able to help pro life people to actually respond to bodily autonomy arguments and not straw man pro choice people. All right. Bad pro life argument number 4. Abortion is wrong because it hurts women. Abortion does hurt women. I think women have a higher risk of getting breast cancer, of if they abort, especially a first pregnancy, they can get way more severe risk of having having breast cancer. A lot of women feel guilt sometimes, like severe depression after an abortion, albeit sometimes not right away. That can happen way later. We know that abortion is linked to future infertility, other difficulties in pregnancy. Abortion does hurt women. But you know what also hurts women? Smoking. Smoking hurts women. I think smoking hurts women, but I don't think that smoking should be illegal. Here's the problem. Just because it hurts me to do something doesn't necessarily mean that it should be against the law. Just because something is morally wrong doesn't even necessarily mean it should be against the law. Sometimes pro choice people actually agree that abortion is wrong on some level. I've talked to a lot of pro choice people where I'll ask them, I'll make this distinction. I'm trying to understand what they think about abortion. And I'll say, okay, it sounds like you think that abortion is kind of maybe wrong on some level. Like, I think we would probably agree that cheating on someone that you're in a committed relationship with, that's wrong. Like, if you're in a long term committed relationship, whether that's marriage or dating or whatever, and you cheat on that person, everybody agrees that that is wrong. But that's not illegal. Like, we're not going to make cheating on your spouse illegal. And a lot of pro choice people are in that boat. They think that abortion is kind of like that. It's a thing that's wrong, but shouldn't be illegal. Granted, there's a lot of pro choice people that think abortion is totally fine. But some pro choice people think it's wrong, but it shouldn't be illegal. We all know that there are things that are wrong that shouldn't be illegal. There are also things that are wrong that should definitely be illegal. There's kind of like these two categories. So things that are wrong that should be illegal are like murder, rape, assault and battery, that kind of stuff. And then we've got over here cheating on someone that you're in a relationship with. And somewhere between those two things, like there's this long spectrum, and we could probably have an epic debate about every single possible wrong thing and which camp it should fall in. And quite honestly, I don't think we need to have that debate right now. But it's pretty obvious to me that abortion should be illegal because of how harmful it is to kill an innocent person. Abortion falls in this camp with murder and rape and assault and battery, not in this camp with cheating on someone that you're in a relationship with. And that's what I want to focus on when I'm in a conversation with a pro choice person. As our friend Jay Watts of Merely Human Ministries once said, there is a difference between what's wrong with abortion and why abortion is wrong. In other words, there are lots of things that are wrong with abortion. Some women get physically hurt because of abortion. I think they're emotionally hurt, at least down the road. Abortion's probably had a negative impact on the social security system, right? Because we've got a lot of people that are retiring and there's not nearly as many workers to come into the economy. So there's a lot of things that are wrong around abortion. But none of those are why abortion is wrong. Abortion is wrong because it kills human beings. Okay, if a pro life woman just says, I regret my abortion, that is the easiest thing for the pro choice side to refute because all they have to do is put up a side, they have to put up a woman on their side that says, I don't regret mine abortion. Abortion isn't wrong because women regret it or because it hurts women. Abortion is wrong because it kills an innocent person. I often see signs when I go to pro life rallies that say women deserve better than abortion. Yes, I agree. I think that's true. But that doesn't say enough. I also think women deserve better than vanilla ice cream, but that doesn't mean that we should stop selling vanilla ice cream. We need to stop trying to sell abortion as this like second rate option or try to sell motherhood and adoption as better choices than abortion. We need to be selling abortion as an unthinkable choice. Bad pro life argument number 5. Think of all the Beethovens that we've murdered. It's this really famous story. Somebody dies of cancer and they meet God at the pearly gates and they say to God, why didn't you ever send someone to cure cancer? And God responds, I did, but you aborted him. Whoa, like pro-lifers use that all the time and they're like, see, abortion is so bad. Here's the problem. Stories like that do not prove that abortion should be wrong. Why? Think about it for 2 seconds. One could very quickly think of a story that would make the exact opposite point. Like it works both ways. Sure, people have been aborted who could have cured cancer or written the next symphony, but future murderers and rapists have also been aborted. So, doesn't that make you pro choice now because we've prevented a bunch of evil by having abortion? Of course not. Okay, the abortion issue is more philosophically complicated than calculating whether society is better off or worse off as a result of 60 million babies being killed in America since 1973. That is utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is a very faulty moral compass that gets some right answers accidentally sometimes. However, it also gets some really wrong answers. Like, utilitarianism would justify killing homeless people in order to steal their organs. Like, if utilitarianism is right, then homeless people are completely useless to society. So we should kill them and harvest their organs because for like one homeless person we killed, we could probably save 5 people that are going to be super productive in society. Obviously, utilitarianism is not a good moral compass. But let's go deeper. I think there's a more significant problem with the Beethoven argument. And I think this is ultimately the reason that you should never use it in a conversation with a pro choice person. Even if it were to be convincing to pro choice people, which I don't think it is, there's still a bigger problem here. I think the clearest way to demonstrate that argument is in the difference between intrinsic and instrumental value. Okay, there's one view, the pro life view, that says humans are intrinsically valuable. They're valuable because of the kind of thing that they are, not because of anything that you can do functionally. You're valuable because of the kind of thing that you are. And then there's this other view that says that your value is purely instrumental, that you are just carriers of what is value, like your intelligence or your consciousness or your sentience. That's what's value. The thing that you can give back to society, that's what's value. These are two radically different ideas about human value. So when we make the Beethoven argument, we're arguing that abortion is wrong because of the potential value the child could have had to give back to society. We're arguing that abortion is wrong because children have instrumental value. Because humans are valuable because of what they could do for society, like cure cancer or write a symphony. That is a pro choice argument. Fetuses don't offer any value back to society. So abortion would have to be fine, right? See, that argument appeals straight to how pro choice people are often thinking, their entire worldview. The Beethoven argument implies that people have value because of what they can do. Instead, we need to be saying abortion is wrong because it kills human people without adequate justification. Humans are valuable because of the kinds of things that they are, not because of what they can do. Bad pro life argument number 6. Abortion is wrong because it tortures babies to death. When fetal pain begins is a super complicated scientific question. Okay, up until very recently, scientists thought that fetal pain couldn't begin until at least 24 weeks into pregnancy. And most conservative scientists said like maybe between 16 and 20 weeks. Then, in January of 2020, super cool thing happened. An article came out in the Journal of Medical Ethics called Reconsidering Fetal Pain. And our friends at Secular Pro Life noticed really 2 interesting things about this article. Number 1, it said that fetal pain might begin way earlier than previously thought, like as early as 12 to 13 weeks. That is a big deal because roughly 10% of abortions happen later than 12 to 13 weeks. But even more interesting, it was written by 2 scientists, Derbyshire and Bachman. Derbyshire is pro-choice, and Bachman is pro-life. In fact, Derbyshire, the pro-choice researcher, had already done a ton of other fetal pain research, and he had previously said very strongly, like in court, testifying for Planned Parenthood, that fetal pain cannot begin before 24 weeks. It has often been said that once you publish an idea, you cannot change your mind. And to Derbyshire's credit, he proved that wrong. He suffered a lot of political fallout as a result when he came out with this paper saying, actually, I think I was wrong. And fetal pain can start as early as 12 to 13 weeks. That's incredible. Based on Derbyshire and Bachman's paper, let's assume that the most conservative, plausible view out there is that the unborn can start feeling pain at 12 to 13 weeks. Can you see the problem with arguing that abortion should be illegal because it tortures babies to death? Because babies can feel pain. Yeah, I bet you can. The pro choice person can simply respond by saying that 90% of abortions happen before that. So those 90% of abortions would have to be fine. And at best, all you've really proved is that babies after 12 weeks should receive anesthesia before the abortion. Clearly, the ability to feel pain does not prove that you're a valuable person. Like, squirrels can feel pain too, and squirrels aren't people. The fact that like a certain fetus can or can't feel pain says absolutely nothing about whether killing them is justified or not. Now, I do think it can be helpful to bring up fetal pain in order to humanize the unborn and debunk the whole like it's just a clump of cells slogan. So, pro life people should know about this Bachman and Derbyshire study and should be talking about it. We need to be mentioning and researching fetal pain, but you have to be careful that fetal pain isn't substituting for an argument because the existence of fetal pain itself does not prove that abortion is wrong. At best, it just proves that babies should receive anesthesia before getting an abortion. That is 6 bad pro life arguments. If you have used one of those faulty pro life arguments in the past, do not beat yourself up about it. I am in the same boat as you, but I hope that you can learn from those mistakes that I made and help your own conversations go better in the future. And we at ERI have a lot of tools to help your conversations go better in the future. The Equip for Life course is our really flagship material. It's this online pro life apologetics course. That's the course that I took my college club through that enabled us to have hundreds and thousands of conversations with pro choice students on our campus. I only have time to tell you right now about one of the arguments that you would learn in this course because I promised in my title to this speech, right, that I was going to tell you about bad pro life arguments and what to use instead. So here's one example of an argument that you should be using instead. And we'll talk a lot more about the Equip for Life course, what it is, how you can get access to it, how you can use it, all of that at the end of this webinar. So I want to teach you about one specific argument. It's an argument about the personhood of the unborn. Because I think one of the most important jobs of a pro life advocate is to explain and demonstrate to pro choice people why the unborn should be considered people like you and I, people that have rights, and why that means that killing them is wrong and is denying an equal right to life to someone that should have an equal right to life. This argument is particularly amazing because it has changed more pro choice minds than any other argument our team has seen. Okay, there's a lot of ways to explain that the unborn should have personhood, and our team used to use a different argument. And then a couple of years ago, we really discovered and created and crafted this new argument. And we went out and we tested it on tons of college campuses. And it kind of became a joke at debriefs. After we're done with the outreach, we'd like sit in a circle and talk about how it went. And people would say, "Hey, I had a pro-choice person change their mind today." And you'd say, "Oh, okay, tell me what happened. What arguments did you use?" And they'd say, "I used the equal rights argument." And the next person would be like, "Hey, me too. I had 2 people change their minds today because I used the equal rights argument." And then a third person is like, "I also use the equal rights argument," and you can see where this is going. We have never seen a pro-life argument change as many pro-choice minds as this one. It's called the equal rights argument. And I am going to talk through right now that argument with you. I'm not going to teach you how to make it. You can get that in the Equip for Life course, but I'm just going to make the argument, talk it through with you so you have a really good idea of how it works and kind of how I would make it if I was talking to a pro-choice person. So the first thing that we're going to do is talk about equality. We're just going to step away from the question of abortion for a second because that might seem like a really weird thing to do in a conversation about abortion, but pro-choice people, if their walls are up, are going to feel really comfortable if we like take a break from that and go talk about something they probably feel really passionate about: equality. And I'd say, like, I think it's really important to talk about equal rights because there have been a lot of instances in human history when people have been wrongly excluded from having equal rights because of their race or their gender or their religion or their disability status or whatever. And so, can we just take a break from talking about abortion for a second and talk about equality? Like, I want to understand how you think about rights more generally. How do you explain equal rights and how do you think about that? And I'm going to set up this idea of the Equal Right to Life Club. It's a concept. Here, let's imagine that there's this like big circle, And everybody inside the circle gets an equal right to life, and everybody outside of the circle does not. In other words, everybody inside of the circle deserves to be equally protected from violence or equally protected from being killed. The obvious question then is, who gets access to this circle? Who is it that gets to be in the equal right to life community? And I'll start asking the pro choice person about different examples to try to understand, well, who should be in this community in their minds and who shouldn't. And spoiler alert, we're going to agree about all of these. The first one I always ask is, what about human adults? Like, what about you and I? Should you and I be in the equal right to life club? And they're going to say yes. Okay. I mean, if you don't agree that at least I should be in the Equal Right to Life Club, I'm going to feel a little less emotionally safe in this dialogue, right? So it's kind of a joke, and I'll even say that, and we'll get a good laugh about it. Like, yeah, obviously the two of us, we're in the Equal Right to Life Club. All right, but what about everybody that we can see right now? Like everybody on this college campus or everybody in our church, should they all have an equal right to life? Yeah. What about adults that are distinguished by different characteristics, like people that have different heights and different ethnicities, sex, disability status, gender, all of that stuff? Should all of them have an equal right to being protected from violence? Yeah. Never met a pro choice person that didn't agree with that. So then I'm going to move on and I'm going to ask, okay, what about newborns? Every time I've asked this question, except for I think maybe once in my thousands of conversations, they always agree yes, newborns are in the equal right to life circle. They should have an equal right to life too. And occasionally, you might get someone who actually thinks it should be okay to kill newborns. If that happens, don't panic. We've got material for you in the Equip for Life course. I can teach you how to talk to that person, but that is really rare. So I'm not that worried about it right now. So after the purchase person has agreed, and I can affirm that, find some common ground, be like, yeah, absolutely. Glad we're on the same page. Definitely newborns. It's wrong to kill newborns. Then I'll say, okay, this might seem like kind of a weird one, but let's actually consider it for a second. What about squirrels? Remember, excluding squirrels from the Equal Right to Life Club doesn't mean that they have no rights. The Equal Right to Life Club is just a group of people who deserve to be equally protected from violence. Someone outside of that circle, like a squirrel, that doesn't mean that they should have no rights. It just means they aren't the same as the people inside the circle. That's also pretty obvious to all but about one pro choice person I've ever talked to. Everybody agrees that squirrels aren't the same as you and I. I'm not saying that we should be able to like torture squirrels for fun. I have a lot of common ground with animal rights activists. I am not saying that we should torture squirrels for fun. I'm just saying they're not the same as you and I. And when I explain that and point that out, pretty much every pro choice person is going to agree with me. So here's what we know from our sorting process. We know we have this Equal Right to Life Club, and human adults are in, newborns are in, and squirrels are out. This obviously raises a question. There must be some reason why some things in the Equal Right to Life community are in, and some things like don't get into the Equal Right to Life community. Let's call the thing that gives you entry to that community X. In other words, there's got to be something that the creatures who get into the Equal Right to Life community, something they have, that the creatures who don't get into the Equal Right to Life community lack. A lot of people have tried to answer this question. What is X? What is the thing that's granting entry into the circle? And if I'm going over this with a pro choice person, I will ask them what they think X is. Do they have any ideas? And often they'll present a few ideas and we'll go through them together. And we're going to try to compare their answer to the things that we already know. We know that adults need to be in, we know that newborns need to be in, we know that squirrels need to be out. So I'm going to compare their answer and see, like, does that work? Does that pass the test of the things we already know? One thing we also know is that X can't be something on a spectrum, like something that some things in the circle could have more of while others in the circle have less. It has to be something that we all have equally if we're going to explain how we have an equal right to life. So, for example, intelligence can't explain why we have an equal right to life because, spoiler alert, we are not all equally intelligent. And if you don't believe me, just start reading the comments under the first YouTube video that you find. Clearly, we are not all equally intelligent, and that is okay. Like I am pro equal right to life for obnoxious people on the internet. I'm just saying that intelligence can't explain why we should have an equal right to life. I want to go through with you some of the most common answers that I've heard pro choice people give to this question of what is X? What is granting access to the community? First one, the ability to think. And by that I mean like the ability to have mental processes at all. So we're going to test that with what we already know. Does that include adults? Yeah. Does that include infants? Yes. Infants can have mental processes. Does that exclude squirrels? No. Squirrels can have mental processes. So the ability to think cannot explain why we have an equal right to life. Here's another one, the ability to feel pain. And just for the sake of simplicity, let's make the ability to feel pain mean the feeling caused by disease, injury, or something that hurts the body. So, like physical pain. Does that include adults? Yeah. Does that include infants? Also, yes. Does that exclude squirrels? No. Squirrels can feel pain, as can most animals. Side note here, sometimes pro life people like to bring up Gabby Gingras or other people that have like a rare condition, like hereditary sensory autonomic neuropathy type 5. Okay, there are some human adults that cannot feel pain. But most pro choice people don't find that very convincing if they bring that up. They feel like that's more of like an exception to the rule than actually something that disproves the rule. I found it way more effective to demonstrate that the ability to feel pain would mean that basically the entire animal kingdom would have to be in the Equal Right to Life Club. That tends to be a lot more convincing to them. Here's another one, self awareness. And by that I mean like the ability to reflect on your own existence at all. Does that include adults? Yes. Does that include infants? No. Infants are not self aware. Like the most basic form of self awareness doesn't start until they're a few months old. And there's actually some philosophers that think that like self awareness is an even more complex thing that doesn't start until at least 18 months old. So self awareness definitely cannot be the thing that grants an equal right to life. As a side note, would this exclude squirrels? Yes, because squirrels are not self aware. They don't know of their own body as a physical object. But there are some animals that are self aware, like chimps and dolphins are self aware. Next one, viability. And by that I mean like the ability to live outside of a uterus. Does that include adults? Yeah, of course. Does that include infants? By definition. And does that exclude squirrels? No. Squirrels are also able to survive outside of a uterus. You're seeing the problem here. Sentience, last one, meaning the minimal ability to perceive the world. Does that include adults? Yes. Does that include infants? Yes. Does that exclude squirrels? No. Squirrels are very sentient. For example, there's eastern gray and eastern fox squirrels, these certain types of squirrels that actually like get their nuts, they collect their nuts for the winter, and then they go hide them in places all over a 7-acre area. And they memorize where they hit all these spots, and then they go back just one at a time to each spot whenever they're hungry. Squirrels are super sentient, okay? You probably noticed a consistent thing as we went through all of these potential answers. And our friend Trent Horn says it really well. Pro choice definitions of personhood always either include too many things, like squirrels, or they exclude too many things, like newborns. And so, as I'm working through answers with a pro choice person, eventually we're going to get to a place where they're going to ask me what I think the answer is because none of their answers are working. Or sometimes I'll offer them it out and I'll be like, hey, what if I, tell you what I think the answer is and then you can react to it? Like, come back at me here. If you're a little stumped, it's okay. Like, I've spent time thinking about this question. So, I'll tell you what I think, and then you can tell me if you think I'm like totally off base. Do you think that my answer is right, or like, what do you think about it? And I'll say like, I think the only answer that works with what we already know from our sorting process is that something like our human nature. Something like our human nature is the only thing that everyone in the community shares equally. And so, to bring abortion back into it, this is why I think embryos should be protected from violence because they have that same thing that the rest of us in the community share. So I think the unborn have to be included in the Equal Right to Life Club. That's ultimately why I'm against abortion. It's about equal rights and anti violence. I think that people, innocent people, should be protected from violence. And I think it's pretty obvious that the only way I can be consistent about the fact that I care about equality means I have to be pro life. Because the unborn have to be included in that equal rights to life community. Let me say that again. The only logical way to affirm equal rights is to protect the unborn. And if I'm right about that, that's a really big deal. That means that abortion is the biggest human rights violation of our time. Like, that is not just a shrug and move on kind of thing. That is it. That is the equal rights argument in a nutshell. It's changed more pro choice minds than anything we have ever seen at ERI. I use it in almost every single conversation I have about abortion. I use a lot of other conversations, a lot of other pro life arguments in those conversations as well. But that one is key. And it's actually where ERI got our name from. Equal Rights Institute, this is the equal rights argument. We got our name for our organization from the name of this argument because it is so powerful and is a cornerstone of what we teach in the Equip for Life course. Now, we're going to talk a lot about the Equip for Life course, but first, I want to toss it to some Q&A because I have been talking for a really long time and I already see that there are some questions in the chat, people that are interested in hearing thoughts about different things. So, let's talk about some Q&A questions. Hey, Emily, welcome back to the screen here.
Hey, thank you. I love listening to you talk. It's just so wonderful every time I hear this presentation. I love it. Um, I want to actually start with one or two really common questions that we haven't gotten in the chat yet. But I want to just start out by asking, how do you respond to someone who says, I'm pro life, but I just don't think that a woman who has been raped should be forced to carry that baby to term? How
Hmm.
do you respond to that?
Sure. So let me start out by saying that I think pro life people often do a really bad job of responding to pro choice people that are bringing up the case of rape. Like, pro life people often want to point out that it's really, really a small percentage of abortions. And that is true. Okay. It is true that it is a very small percentage of abortions. But when you look at how many abortions happen per year, that's still over 1,000 women every single year that are having an abortion because of rape. And those are real women. They deserve to be talked about. So please do not minimize that this is a real thing. Instead, I'm going to take, first of all, several minutes to talk about the fact that I think rape is one of the worst things that I know of. And I want them to know that because I think pro life people often have a really difficult time expressing the genuine compassion that they have for survivors of rape. Like, we want to get right away to making our argument. And don't worry, I'm going to get there. I'm going to make the argument. But first, I want to take a bunch of time to help this person understand that I really do understand how horrible rape is. I might say something like, I think that rape is one of the worst things I know of. I've never experienced it myself, but I have several friends who have, and I know how traumatic it has been for them in their lives. And I think that if someone forces themselves on a woman, I think they've committed multiple moral crimes. I mean, they forced themselves on them in the first place. They've now forced them to continue having that memory in their heads forever. Like, the road of healing after that is so hard. And if she becomes pregnant, now they've forced her to go through pregnancy and make what is quite possibly the most difficult decision of her life. She has to decide either to give this child up for adoption, which can be really emotionally difficult for most birth moms, or she can choose to go through with the pregnancy and raise this child for 18 long years. That is an expensive and time consuming commitment, right? Or she can do the wrong thing and she can hire a doctor to kill the child. I think that the rapist should pay for all of those things. And I think that society doesn't take rape seriously enough. Like, we still have people that say things like, well, if she hadn't worn that dress and if she hadn't been in that part of town, they say things that implicitly put the blame on the woman and put zero blame on the man that actually committed an act of physical and emotional and sexual violence against her. Okay, I think that we do not take rape seriously enough, and it really upsets me. I'm going to take several minutes to talk about that with the pro choice person. And then I'm going to say, I'm going to use a classic pro life technique, classic pro life argument. It's called trot at a toddler, and you'll learn about this in the Equip for Life course too. I'm going to say, can I ask you kind of a weird question? Just bear with me for a second. I'll explain why in a minute. Um, Imagine that we had a woman who was raped, and she decided not to have an abortion when she became pregnant. Like some women do that. She decided she didn't want to have an abortion, and she went through with the pregnancy and gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. And things were going as well as they could. I mean, she was getting the counseling, the therapy that she needed. She had this great support system. She was on the very long road to healing, and the rapist's butt was in jail where he belonged. And things were going okay, just about until that little boy turned 2. And that's about when children start to look a little less like a baby and more like a boy, more like a little boy. And unfortunately, this little boy looked a lot like his father. He looked like the rapist. And that was extremely difficult for her. Okay, she started having flashbacks every day and nightmares every night, and she couldn't bear to be around her son. Like, it got so bad that she actually wanted to kill her son. I don't want any woman to be in that situation. Oh my goodness. But I think we can agree that she shouldn't be able to kill her son, right? Like, I'm pretty sure we can agree on that. And the purchase person is always going to say, like, yeah, obviously I agree, that's okay. And I say, I have this really weird view. You might not agree with me about that, and that's okay. Like, we can go talk about that. But I have this view that a fetus, from the moment of fertilization, is just as valuable a human being as that toddler in the story. And so that really affects the way that I think about this, because I want to help that woman. I think we should do absolutely everything we can to help that woman. Like, I think we should be Jesus the way that he would want the church to deal with that. Like, we need to surround her with all of the love and the support and the resources. And I know none of that is ever going to fix everything. We can't fix everything, but we need to do the best that we absolutely can. We should be doing everything for her except kill someone. I don't think that we can do that. And so if I'm right about what abortion is, then I don't think that we should allow abortion even in the case of rape, because we already know that rape is an act of violence against an innocent person. And I don't think that we can try to make that situation better by committing a second act of violence against a second innocent person. That's how I explain my position on abortion in the case of rape. I know that was a long answer, but there you go. I think it takes time. You need to have all of that time to really explain and get the purchase person to understand where you're coming from.
Thank you, Emily. Another question that we have in the chat: many pro choice people do not know what an actual abortion looks like. How can we help them to know how an abortion takes place? And is this a good argument?
So, yes, I do think you're right that a lot of pro choice people don't know what an actual abortion is. And I think it makes a big difference to a lot of pro choice people. However, I don't think that providing that information right at the beginning of a conversation is usually helpful. And here's why. I've talked to a lot of pro choice people, and they tend to come into a conversation with their walls up, not wanting to listen to anything you have to say. And if I pull out pictures or facts or statistics or whatever it is, their immediate brain response is like, oh, that's pro life propaganda. I don't have to listen to any of that. That's not true. These images have been photoshopped, whatever that is. Like, they're instantaneously not going to be interested in that because of just where they are in the conversation right now. And so I use graphic images of abortion, but I have them in a brochure in my back pocket. And I'll talk to a pro choice person for 20, 30 minutes, maybe longer, about arguments around abortion, helping me to understand where they're coming from. I'll make pro life arguments like the equal rights argument, like some bodily autonomy arguments. Like, we'll go through a bunch of stuff. And when I feel like we've gotten to a point where they really respect me, I've built a lot of rapport. Like, they don't think I'm trying to pull one over on them, they're having a good conversation. That's the time where I can say something like, hey, I think it might be helpful for us to just make sure we're on the same page about what we're really talking about here. I have these images of what actually happens in abortion. And I feel like if we're going to be fully informed about what it is we're talking about, maybe we need to see what an abortion really looks like and like understand what the procedure is. And I know that images aren't arguments. Like, the fact that an image of an abortion victim, someone who's had an abortion, a fetus, uh, that image isn't an argument in itself. Just because something looks gross doesn't mean it's inherently wrong. Like if I saw a picture of open heart surgery, I'd be like, ooh, that's gross. But that doesn't mean open heart surgery is wrong, right? But I do think it's important for us to really know what we're talking about here. So I have these images. Would you be okay with taking a look at them with me? When I'm 30 minutes into a conversation, they will always say yes. Because at that point, I've built the rapport that they're in that good place. And so I will pull out that brochure and I'll look at the images with them for a few minutes and give them some time to just process that. And the conversation always goes really well afterwards because they trust me. We've built that relationship. They don't just think that this is pro life propaganda now. Those images can actually land and do what you are hoping they're going to do. I think that is the most effective way to use this kind of images to talk about what happens in an abortion.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. Another question we have in the chat, the equal rights argument fits the consistent life ethic. How do we respond to those in the pro life movement who don't support the equal rights of all races, ethnicities, disabled immigrants, etc.?
Sure. So, there are a lot of people who, can use the consistent life ethic view. There's lots of pro life organizations that are very, very passionate about the consistent life ethic, and that is great. If you are one of those people and you want to help other people to agree with your consistent life ethic views, I would essentially advise you to do the same things that I advise pro life people to do when they talk to pro choice people. So, first of all, that involves using a lot of practical dialogue tips. That involves, creating an environment and a conversation with a person like that where they get to trust you. They get to bring their walls down. So you're finding a lot of common ground with them. You're asking clarification questions, trying to actually understand why this person maybe agrees with you about being pro life in one sense, but doesn't agree with something else that you're hoping that they would agree about, right? So I would ask a lot of clarification questions. Try to understand where they're coming from and rephrase what they said back to them. Make sure that they know that I'm trying to understand where they're coming from. And so if I do all of those things, the really basic dialogue tips that are quite honestly so obvious, and yet we forget to do them all the time, I would do that first. And then something like the rights argument, you're right, it could be really effective for talking about those people. Now, the equal rights argument is specifically designed to talk about the equal right to life, the equal right to equal protection from violence. And so that doesn't necessarily fit into all of the other things that consistent life ethic might support. I know there's a lot of different people that use that term differently, and I don't know what the specific person who are asking this question was using it to mean. Like consistent life ethic, some people in more conservative religious communities are talking about more things like we're not going to have euthanasia, we're not going to have assisted suicide, things like that. Whereas there's some more liberal communities that expand that to include LGBTQ plus rights, things like rights to gay marriage, all of that. So I don't know what you meant by that, but regardless of what you meant by that, the equal rights argument specifically is about the right to life, which doesn't necessarily apply to all those other things. However, if you wanted to talk about those other things, you can certainly use a similar tactic, a similar strategy of trying to explain how you think rights from a certain category mean that we have to also grant rights somewhere else. So, whatever it is that you're trying to use to explain about your consistent life ethic view to someone else, you could certainly use an argument that's similar to that. Do we
Thank
have
you,
any more
Emily.
questions?
I think that's all we have time for right now, anyway. So
Perfect.
I'm going to turn it back over to you to talk more about the Equip for Life course, which you mentioned earlier.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm so excited to talk about this because I told you my story earlier, right? I told you that the Equip for Life course literally changed my life forever. It was the thing that got me into doing effective pro life advocacy, actually changing my campus culture, all of those things. And so the Equip for Life course is an online pro life apologetics course. It would take you from point zero of literally how do you talk to anyone about a controversial issue? What are all those practical dialogue tips? What are the things not to do in a conversation? All of that just to make sure that you create an environment where someone is open to hearing what you have to say, where someone would be open to changing their minds. It'll take you from that point all the way up through responding to every single pro choice argument out there, up to what the single most advanced pro choice arguments are out there. Like, how do you respond to the smartest pro choice philosophy pressers and to the violinist argument, which is quite arguably the most famous philosophy argument in the pro choice movement? It was written by Judith Jarvis Thompson, super famous academic paper, gets studied in a lot of philosophy classes. How do you respond to that? It's going to take you all the way through to there. Comprehensive. It is an online series of videos, and there's a workbook that goes along with it to help you go through the course by yourself, go through it as a group, which I highly recommend. And this course is available to you online. It costs $49 for a personal subscription to this course, and it is lifetime. You have access to that literally forever. And it has been transformative to so many college clubs, church groups, county right to life groups, like you name it. I have seen so many people use this course and be able to actually go out and engage with pro choice people. And I know, other Emily, you have an amazing story about that in your own life. Like, people already heard my story, but I know that you have one as well that you wanted to tell.
Yeah, honestly, my college experience, I think, was similar to yours without maybe the happy ending of discovering Equal Rights Institute. They weren't around back then, and we really would have benefited. I led a college club, pro-life club as well, and I can't imagine the good things that could have happened had I known about ERI back then and these wonderful arguments. But yeah, just to share a little of my personal testimony, if you will, about ERI. Back when I was in high school and then probably into college, I honestly believed that abortion was just so blatantly, obviously wrong and evil that all we had to do to end it was just tell people that and show them. And so I thought that the task of the pro life movement and me personally was just to inform the public that abortion was murder. And that once I had informed them, I had done all that I could do. And at that point, if they wanted to reject the truth, reject the facts, it was no longer my problem, my responsibility. That it was my job just to kind of share the truth with the world. And after that, there's nothing else I could do. Of course, there's one little problem with this worldview, which is that it's not that simple. Pro-choice people don't just automatically change their minds when you confront them with the facts, right? That abortion kills babies. If they did, abortion would be over. If some of the arguments that Emily talked about today worked, then our job would be a whole lot easier. But it's not that simple, because pro-choice people have complex reasons for supporting abortion, and they have an entire worldview that fits around that as pro-lifers we almost never understand unless we're exposed to some good arguments like what the Equal Rights Institute has to offer. So our conversations and our interactions with pro-choice people have to be thoughtful and nuanced, because as Emily has shown, hopefully we can be effective. We can change people's minds, but my tactic from high school is not the way to do it. So fast forward to 2014, when I first went through the Equal Rights Institute course, the Equipped for Life course, and I'll be honest, it really challenged many things about the way that I approached conversations about abortion and even pro-life advocacy in general. But for the first time, I really was able to begin conversing with pro-choice people with empathy, with understanding, with more respect for them than I probably had in the past, actually understanding where they were coming from, and being able to respond to their underlying assumptions instead of just treating each argument in isolation, just like a box to be checked with the memorized answer that I had. Or just the response that, it all comes back to abortion kills babies. Isn't it simple? Come on. And best of all, I was able to actually make progress in changing people's minds. And that really, it's an incredible experience, really, to be able to have that impact, because people don't change their minds easily. They really don't. So I highly, highly recommend this course. And now it's time for my very special announcement, which is that if you are part of an affiliated Orthodox Christians for Life parish ministry, we have partnered with Equal Rights Institute to offer you access to this course completely for free. So all you need to do is send me an email, emily@oclife.org, and I will help you get set up. Now, if you're not a member of an affiliated parish ministry, you should still enroll in the course. I promise you, it is absolutely worth every penny. And like Emily said, this is lifetime access, and I know they're constantly updating it, adding new content, lots of supplemental materials that you have access to. But if you are interested in the parish ministry program, let me just quickly talk about that. Our parish ministry program is designed to help you address the abortion issue in a parish context. And just like, many of our churches have other ministries to help the homeless, to minister to those in prison, etc., you can form an Orthodox Christians for Life parish ministry to educate and engage your parish on this sanctity of life topic. And we will support you, we'll help you partner with local organizations that support women in crisis pregnancies and save babies. And we will provide you with resources, support, and training. And obviously, now part of that training includes this wonderful training from Equal Rights Institute. So if you're interested, you can simply go to our website, oclife.org/parish ministry program, and fill out the application, and we will get in touch with you. So, what can a parish group do with this course? Well, we hope that it will just help you to have better dialogues with anyone you come into contact with, not only in your personal and professional circles, but honestly, maybe even in your parish. Perhaps you're aware of people who don't adhere to the church's teaching on abortion. They think it's okay, or they struggle with certain arguments, certain issues related to abortion. This course can help you to be successful in changing their hearts and minds, and in turn, just creating a true culture of life in your parish. And that's what we want to do with Orthodox Christians for Life, is truly have an Orthodox pro-life ethic that is just permeating every single parish in the country. And I think that this course can really help us to do that. So I know that the course is very flexible. It can be accessed, again, either as an individual or as a group. So Emily, tell us how you would recommend using this course.
Sure. So there are a lot of different ways that I have seen groups or individuals be really successful at going through this course. And so it is not a one size it is a one size fits all. You don't all have to do it the same way kind of a thing. So I want to give you a couple different ideas of how you could do this. But I highly encourage you to get the course, become one of their ministry affiliates, become an affiliate of Orthodox Christians for Life. You can get this at no cost to you, and that would be amazing. And you can also be involved with them in a lot of other things they do. But if you're not part of them, or you can't be part of them for some weird reason, I don't know why you wouldn't want to be part of them, but then you can purchase it on your own to go through for $49. The Equip for Life course you can access if you want to just go there and like check it out before you decide if you want to do it. That's equippedcourse.com. You can also just go to our website, equalrightsinstitute.com, and you're going to find the Equip for Life course in about 2 seconds. It's not that hard to find just from our straight website, but the direct link there is equipcourse.com. So I encourage you to get that course and then to figure out the best way for you to go through it. So there is a workbook that goes along with it. And regardless of whether you're doing it solo or you're doing it with a group, you should absolutely use that workbook. It will help highlight for you what the key points are, help you have space to take notes and really like digest the material. But the best way to do it is with a group, because that workbook has lots of practice dialogue prompts. Okay, it is one thing to just watch the videos and hope you get something out of it. You will not get nearly as much out of it as if you actually take the time to practice using the arguments that you just learned. Like, I just gave you the equal rights argument. I didn't break it down and like literally here are the steps that I'm doing, but you heard me give it. It took me like 10 minutes to like really explain it to you, but I doubt most of you could repeat it back to me perfectly. That's going to take some practice before you feel comfortable making something like the equal rights argument. And so that workbook has all of these practice dialogue prompts to help you and people in your group do what we call practice dialogues, where you go into role play mode. You saw me get to play a kind of funny pro choice person earlier, but in reality, when I do it in a dialogue, I'm not quite as animated about it. I'll just play a normal pro choice person. And it A, helps you get in the shoes of why are people actually pro choice, and B, it gives you practice getting to respond to pro choice arguments in a really non-threatening environment, because it's another person in your pro-life group who's just pretending to be pro-choice for the sake of this conversation. And so what I encourage people to do is go through it as a group, use the workbook, and use those practice dialogue prompts. Ideally, after every single lesson that you watch of the Equip for Life course, you should be practice dialoguing. You should be making sure that you are actually getting the chance to use the argument, so that when you go out and talk to a real pro-choice person, it comes naturally. You're not like panic trying to think like, oh my gosh, what argument should I be using right now? Like, it just comes really naturally to you. I want to highlight that comment. I just saw Tim put it on the screen. Thank you for saying that the program is really good. Trevor, you've gone through the Equip for Life course, or at least most of it, and you're saying it's awesome. I love an endorsement that doesn't come from me on screen. That's so great. Thank you, Trevor. Um, so, one of the best ways to go through it, as I was saying, with a group, do those practice dialogues. Now, I encourage most of the groups that I help to coach going through the course not to literally sit and watch the videos as a group, like in their class. Like, don't have your group together and just sit and watch videos the whole time. That is boring, not engaging at all. What I encourage you, if you're a leader of one of these groups, you should preview the material ahead of time. Pick out maybe a few little things that you want to make sure that you like show in the meeting. So you pick out maybe like this 5-minute video from this module that's like, wow, I couldn't explain it as well as Josh did in that video. And so I'm going to show these 5 minutes, but then I am going to personally teach the other material because I feel comfortable with it. I've learned it myself. And I'm going to have members interact with me. We're going to use the discussion questions in the workbook. Then we're going to do the practice dialogues. You want to do this in the most engaging way possible. Like, put on your teacher hat. I have a degree in education. That's what my college degree was in. So I'm really passionate about teaching this well. Do not let people just sit and watch videos. If you're an individual, you're going to have to just sit and watch the videos. I'm sorry. But if you're leading a group, don't let them just sit and watch the videos. Do stuff, interact, be teaching the material actively, not just passively taking it in. There are a lot of different ways that you can do it, but those are some of my highlights. Quick, Trevor, I see your last question in the chat. You got the online course, but you're not sure if you got the book. You did. You did get the book, I promise. It is the very first module of the course. So if you log into your Equip for Life course, the very first thing, there's going to be like a survey where we're just trying to understand what types of people take our course. You don't have to take the survey. It's not required of you by any means, but please take the survey. It's helpful. The next module is the workbook, and you can download it. You can print it if you want to, use it on your computer, whatever. The other place you can find that workbook is underneath every single video. Every single video in the course, underneath there'll be a little link that says PDF workbook. And so if you missed it in the first module, you can find it underneath every single video. That's where it is. If you can't find it, Trevor, if something's like weird on the internet, please email me. My name's Emily. My email is emily@equalrightsinstitute.com. Super easy to remember. Trevor, okay, that makes sense. Great. Yes, email me if you have problems, but that's where it is. I'll toss it back to you, Emily.
Yeah, so I just want to say, we do want to invite anyone to participate because, and we want you to invite anyone to participate in your parish. So if you're part of an Orthodox Christians for Life parish ministry group, this is not just for maybe you and the small handful of people that have participated in activities with your group so far. Most of our parish ministries are still new. They're still getting started. So I know most of them are not super huge yet. But know that this is something you can open up to the whole parish to participate in because, your goal with the parish ministry is to educate and engage. That means involving everyone. That means inviting the youth group or the young adult group to participate in this course. They probably can use it the most because they're the ones in school. Inviting people who perhaps have never participated in any of your ministry's activities before, but they could benefit from it. Inviting your priest, inviting maybe even someone in your parish who is not pro-life, but they could still benefit. And the way that Equal Rights Institute presents their material, as I think you probably learned tonight, is that it is very open and friendly to anyone who has any sort of opinion about abortion. It's not the kind of thing that, needs to be closed off and secretive only to pro-lifers or something. Anyone can benefit and engage with their material. So please open it up to your parish. Try to get a big group going. Maybe this is something that you choose to do uh, this month because it's Sanctity of Human Life month, January, or in February, or you wait till the summer when school's out and you try to get as many high school and college kids as possible. I can help you plan. But please, please invite your parish. And again, if you are not yet part of a parish ministry, but you're interested in that and you'd like some of the perks like this free course, please get in touch with us. And again, our website is oclife.org / parish ministry program if you'd like to learn more about that and apply. Emily, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up?
Yeah, I just want to encourage all of you that you really can make a difference in the pro life movement and in talking to pro choice people in your community. I am a firm believer that the only way that we're really going to make abortion unthinkable, make it never happen, is if we have changed hearts and minds. And that's what happens in dialogues, in conversations. People don't change their minds because of bumper sticker slogans or billboards. They change their mind because they had a conversation with someone where they felt safe. They felt like you listened to them. They felt like you tried to understand them. And yet you had really good arguments. And they couldn't ignore that. I've seen that happens a lot of times. And I want to tell you about this girl named Anna. When I think I was a sophomore in college at the time. We were about a year into doing these outreaches on my campus, and Anna came up to my outreach table. And I probably talked to her for about maybe like 20 minutes. She had a pretty stereotypical pro choice view. I honestly don't remember that much of what we talked about, but I know that I talked to her for a little while and then she had to go to class. And so we didn't really get to wrap up the conversation super well. And I was like, okay, well, that wasn't a great conversation, but at least I got to make a couple arguments and she seemed to kind of like me. So I moved on with my day, talked to a bunch of other pro choice people. About a month later, Anna sent me a Facebook message. Okay, Anna and I were not friends on Facebook. She just like found me. And she sent me a Facebook message saying, hey, you probably don't remember me, but I talked to you at your like pro life club table about a month ago. And I was wondering if I could interview you for a class. And I was like, sure, yeah, of course. Yeah, well, you can interview me for a class. And so we set up a time to meet and we got pizza. And we sat down at this little, campus pizza parlor. And the first thing that she said was, I haven't been able to stop thinking about that argument that you made. And I was like, whoa. I don't even remember what argument I made. Maybe I better think harder and try to remember what it was. But she said, I talked to you a month ago, and I have not been able to stop thinking about that argument you made. It's been driving me nuts. And that's why I asked you to get pizza today. I do actually need to interview you for a class. I'm in this class where I'm supposed to interview someone that has a different opinion than I do about something and write about the experience. But I wanted to interview you because what you said was so interesting to me, and I just haven't been able to stop thinking about it. And she and I probably talked for about 2 hours. We went through a ton of different pro choice arguments. And at the end of that 2 hours, she sat back in her chair and went, I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think I have to be pro life now. Like, I cannot think of a single thing to say against any of the arguments that you've made. And so I think I have to be pro life. She was just shocked. She like didn't know what to do. She's like, I want to go call my parents because they're pro choice and I want to talk to them about some of these arguments. Can you explain to me some of these arguments again so that I could make them more effectively to my parents? Because I want to help my parents to understand why we've been wrong about this abortion thing this whole time. That's the power of dialogue, of learning good pro life arguments and being able to use them in a graceful and winsome way in a conversation. You can help people like Anna and you can save lives. You can stop people from having abortions who might have had one later in life because you were there for them. That's the power of this course. And I know that Orthodox Christians for Life is going to be there to support you if you go through this course.
That's absolutely right, Emily. And I'm so excited to hear hopefully more stories just like that. I really hope that this webinar was useful to everyone watching, that you learned something or many things that you're going to remember and use in the future. I know I did. Like I said, I've been through this course several times. I've heard Equal Rights Institute presenters multiple times, and I love you guys. Every time I learn something new. It's wonderful. So thank you again, Emily, for joining us, for sharing with us, and thank you all who have joined us to watch, especially those on the East Coast where I know it's getting late. Appreciate you being with us. This webinar will be available later. We'll post the recording somewhere, so we'll let you know about that if you want to pass it on to others who were not here live. I think that's it. So wrapping up, have a good night, guys. Take care.